and all of you who have done me the honor of coming and listening to my poor words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your informative presentation and keynote address. Please join us in the audience. Sir's presentation and keynote address has definitely added great value to our today's event. I am certain that now our visitors' curiosity is enhanced about this special exhibition in the National Museum. With this, I hand over the session to Ms. Pawan Jain, who's going to be the moderator for the upcoming sessions. Ms. Gunjan is a textile designer and researcher. She's been working with handloom weavers in Odisha along with other states in India since the year 2008. She is known for her innovative works in ikat textile, natural dyes and jala technique. Ms. Gunjan, please join us on stage. A round of applause, please. May I now invite Dr. Nazia Kamal to present a shawl to Ms. Pawan Jain as a token of warm welcome. Welcome, Ms. Gunjan, and over to you. Thank you, audience.
Thank you so much for the honor. Good morning to all of you once again, and a warm welcome to our chief guest, Professor B.N. Goswami ji, Madam Lily Pandya, National Museum Director General, our exhibition curator, Dr. Pawan Jain, and all our esteemed panelists, scholars, lovers of art, history and textiles. Gosh, it's been an exciting morning for all of us. While Dr. Jain was giving us a curatorial walk of the exhibition in the morning, and now after hearing Professor Goswami, allow me to share a thought. कपड़ों पे छपी दास्तानों से गुजरो तो कई किरदार मिलते हैं. गए वक्तों की मुंडेरी पे खड़े कुछ यार मिलते हैं. गुजरे हुए इतिहास के आईने में आने वाला भविष्य दिखाई देता है. In today's symposium, we have with us 6 very eminent scholars, practitioners in the field of art history and Indian textiles who will be presenting on different topics related to the exhibition titled Chitram, Vastram. I would request you all to please put your cell phones on silent mode. Thank you. We will start the first session, followed by Q&A up till 1:30 p.m. There will be a lunch break for half an hour. We will resume back sharp at 2 p.m. for the second session, followed by another Q&A session, concluding the symposium by 4:30 p.m. I'll dive right into it, and I'd like to please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Pawan Jain, the fabulous curator of this exhibition Chitram Vastram, Journey of Textiles and Sartorial Styles in Jain Manuscript Paintings. It is for her that we all have been able to gather together. Dr. Jain is an art historian, curator, author, academic, textile designer and entrepreneur. She is a visiting faculty at the National Museum Institute. She has authored a book, Pavilion, on Jain manuscript paintings and written many research papers. She is the co-founder of 2 successful textile and handloom ventures, reviving natural dyeing and printing processes and languishing traditional weaves. And she's also my mom, so I'm a very, very proud daughter. Dr. Jain's presentation will be based on the very title of the exhibition she's curated, Chitram Vastram, Journey of Textiles and Sartorial Styles through Jain Manuscript Paintings, which is based on her PhD thesis. Please welcome Dr. Pawan Jain.
Okay, here I am once again. So, most of the things I have already spoken about while I was giving the curatorial walk. All the same for all those who were not there, and also some additional points that I want to make through this presentation. So, here we are. So, as mentioned earlier, there is a context between three different disciplines: the religion, the art, and the material culture in terms of textiles and costumes. And most of the time, we are looking at paintings for its aesthetic value. But here I'm looking at a painting, not only looking, I'm reading as to what all information can be gleaned through these paintings. Not only for their artistic value, but the other information that can be gotten from these art pieces. So most of the Jain paintings, as I mentioned, come from the region of Gujarat, belonging to Shwetambar sect, and the Jain text, the Kalp Sutra, where we find most of the illustrations, which talks about the lives of the 24 Tirthankars. As Professor Goswami spoke about the further eye, or the eye hanging, just in space, that is one of the most characteristic of the Jain paintings. Besides, it will have very, very attenuated waist, the angularity is there, or the distinction between the male and female, bodies are very, very minimal. Or so much so that sometimes you can easily mistake one for the other. So the question here is, why are we looking at textiles and costumes in these paintings? What is so special? So I have told you the highest tenet of Jain religion is aparigraha, or non-possessiveness. So how it is that Jain painters were, ignoring this very particular fact and depicting the richness of the textiles and costumes in these paintings? So after many years of research, it came to light that from many of the colophons also, in fact, can we change the next slide, please? Yeah. So these are some of the colophons, the last folios of a manuscript. We have the very celebrated colophon of Mandu Kalpasutra, the John Pope, and the Adi Puran that I spoke about in the gallery. So many of these colophons clearly state that the patronage that came towards making of these Jain manuscripts they were the rich Jain textile merchants, traders, and they donated very, very profusely and with a lot of religious fervor, and that's how so much of gold and lapis lazuli, etc., that have been used, and the folios are highly, highly decorative. And in fact, we also owe a lot to the institution of Jain Bhandars, or the libraries that were set up in the around 11th-12th centuries. In fact, hundreds of these libraries were set up in the region of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and the admins, the bhattaraks who took care of these libraries. In fact, there was kind of a competition. And mind you, these libraries did not only store Jain texts, they did not house only the Jain texts. In fact, anything scholarly belonging to all religions or all sections of life, many of the secular and non-secular, both texts were, housed in these libraries. And this also goes to show, in fact, we have the very famous Jain theory of Anekantvad amongst Jainism. And it truly reflects that theory, that way to achieve salvation or moksha is not only one. Jains have always respected all the religions, etc., in thriving in the society. And I will attribute this particular reason as to why it has survived over hundreds and thousands of years on this land while so many religions came and went, one after the other. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So initially the manuscripts were made on palm leaf panels. So you see, now we will talk about some costumes and fashions. And before I do that, I also want to congratulate Dr. B.N. Goswami for his sartorial styles that we all admire so much. And so I thought it was only very befitting that he should be the chief guest for this, this morning. Yes, thank you, sir. Okay. So in the palm leaf period, you see a common man and a woman sitting, a very short dhoti, almost looking like shorts, but he's wearing a dhoti, and a long beard, long hair tied into a bun, and a woman wearing a typical sari here. And then come to the paper period here. And you see the dhoti has become much longer, and you can see the tie-dye pattern very, very clearly in this painting, if you notice clearly. Yeah? Let's move on to the next one. Then we find a lot of regional and sectarian differences between different paintings belonging to Jain religion only. What we are looking at the top is the Shwetambar Kalpasutra, and at the bottom is the Adi Puran, which belongs to the Digambar sect. This particular folio, manuscript was made in the region of Palam, it's part of Delhi now today. And at that time, that area was called the Joginipura. And you can see the clear difference. Look at the richness of textiles in the upper folio that is totally missing in the lower one. The very folkish style you will find in the Digambar manuscript here. And look at the drape there, the straight, the band-like pattern that Trishla, Mahavir's mother, is shown to be wearing. In fact, this is showing the 16 dreams of Digambar sect, where once the Tirthankar's mother conceives the baby. The next one. Here we are looking at some social aspect or the cultural aspect that comes across to us through these paintings. This one, of course, is from Gujarat. Very, very nice. You can see the bold block prints that you see on the dhotis. And this is, of course, the Mandu Kalpasutra. Look at the white dhotis of both the folios. Here you see very, very fine, almost transparent cotton that you get from Gujarat. And the Mandu one, these are rather thick and coarse cotton that these soothsayers are shown to be wearing. Both the scenes relate to the same episode of the Kalpasutra. But what I'm most interested in is the screen in between. In Gujarat, there is no screen or a parda because at that time in Mandu, it was the Islamic rule. And this also goes to show, so the women quarters are different, the men quarters are different. And of course, the scene is the same. The queen is trying to narrate the 14 auspicious dreams to the king. But there is no partition in between or a parda. So this talks a lot about the social environment in these different cities or different regions. And it also tells us that the tolerance of the Islamic rulers also of that time, which also patronized, if not patronized, they let other, other religions also flourish in the land by, allowing making of the Jain temples or Jain manuscripts or Jain icons for that matter. Next one. Now here we are seeing 4 manuscripts from different regions. And this kind of, first of all, on top you are seeing a typical Sidha Pallu sari, which is still a living tradition from Gujarat. And this is from Kalpasutra, Jaunpur, Adi Puran, Gujarat and Mandu. So the typical billowing of this, ordni behind the coffer. It's a continuing tradition till 1540, we reach the Mughal period after that. And in the Gujarat one, this style is not quite visible to us. Next one. Yeah. Now, these three folios have really intrigued me. Why? For the costume of the dancer, that if you carefully look at the Mrigavat of Jaunpur. Look at the flared, tiered skirt that you are finding there. Yeah, the three layers. And the same dancer's costume we find in 1540. That's late 15th century. This is mid 16th century. And we are arriving at Mughal period where Akbar is witnessing a dance performance. And look at the dancer's costume here. So this is a continuity of one fashion that we are witnessing through these different manuscript folios and belonging to different regions and different time period. Next one. Here again I'm trying to compare the palm leaf period and much later period, 1540, and this is almost, first quarter to the middle of the 12th century. Both the scenes are same, the battle between Bharat and Bahubali, the two sons of Rishabdev. But if we look at the costumes very, very carefully, here we have the appearance of the jamas and the pajamas. Yeah? And there, of course, they are wearing very, very short dhotis, almost looking like shorts. Yeah. Next one. Here we are looking at another folio from Laghu Sangrahini Sutra. Look at the costumes of the dancers and the musicians. The Chakdar Jama has made its appearance. And then here we have a Mughal period Kalp Sutra, Jain Kalp Sutra, where the king and the queen, they are wearing the typical Mughal costumes of the time. In fact, there is a lot of controversy about the appearance of Chakdar Jama. And it is often debated that probably it is the time of Akbar that it came into being. But there are a lot of visual and textual evidences that this was actually already a practice amongst the Hindu rulers even before this fashion was adopted during the Akbar period. Yeah. Next one. I think we've already seen this painting upstairs. This is Bhaktambar Strot, which is again done in a typical Mughal style. If I were to remove the caption from the bottom, you will never believe that it is a Jain folio, because it follows all the idioms of the Mughal paintings. The interior, exterior separated by the curtains, the wall alcoves, and especially the costumes of the women that you're watching. The angiya, the choli, the ghagra, the nose ring, and all kinds of jewelry that they are wearing. Next one. Then we will look at this one folio from Updesh Mala from the region of Karnataka. We all know Chandragupta Maurya, the first ruler of the Mauryan dynasty. He embraced Jainism, and there is a story that there was a huge famine in Magad, and he, along with his guru and pontiff Bhadrabahu, they moved down south towards Karnataka. And today also, if you visit Karnataka, you can find, that's where they perform Salekhana. I don't want to get into what is Salekhana. However, so Karnataka today, especially Mudbidri, is a very, very big center, and thousands of Jain manuscripts you will find there. And here, looking at the costumes, you can see typical South Indian influence in their costumes. The jewelry or the kind of a drape, the borders that are, done with gold. So here we have Shantinath, his, cognizance is dear, so that's how we can recognize him. Next one. Professor B.N. Goswami has already spoken so much about the Shahnama, in fact, which was painted by the Jain painters. And in fact, at times it is very difficult to distinguish between the Kalka Charikatha, which is an appendix to Kalpasutra, and the Shahnama copies, because the characters, etc., the dressing is, they are so very similar. And here you can see the Shahi king, who actually was a foreigner. They came from across Indus, and you see the cloud collar, the different, the taklavat, the kabas, etc. And these are some of the various costumes in the making that were being practiced. And of course, the artist based his, the caricature of the Shahi kings on the present, then present ruling Islamic kings. Yeah. Next one. Oh, I'm sorry. This color is not right. Anyway, we have seen this Vigyapti Patra upstairs also, and all that I want to tell you is, then there appear the British costumes in Jain paintings. Yeah, the tailcoats, the sola topi, the trousers, the shirt. So I'm sorry, it is not a very good slide. So you can see, along with the Britishers, some of the locals are also wearing the same costume, who are assisting the British officers in this procession. Yeah. Next one. So in fact, the last development in Jain paintings happened during the Mughal period, and in fact that was the time, that has been the practice even till late, I would say 20th century. Yeah. It's a pity that nowadays nobody is making Jain paintings. In fact, I looked all around. We wanted to do a workshop if anybody was, still doing these Jain paintings. Okay. Now we will talk about various textile processes that we come across in Jain paintings. What do we see? Can we go back? Yeah, anyway. So you can clearly see the resist dye here. Yeah, single color resist dye. You'll have to forgive me because I belong to the textile world also if I get too passionate about, describing these textiles. However, so the block prints on Saraswati, this panel. Yeah. Then next one. Next one. Yeah. Again, so this is a living tradition. This is a modern block print. And this, of course, is the print that we see in Jain manuscript painting. Yeah. So, in fact, I can proudly say this, that India may be one of the very few countries where we have such ancient heritage of textiles or art, and which is still a living tradition today. We still follow the same customs, or we wear the same costumes, or textiles made of these processes. Yeah, next one. Now what we are looking here, indigo dyed resist print. This is dhoti of Saraswati again. And this panel that you are looking at, this was found in the sands of Fustad, just outside Cairo today. And look at the similarity here. And it can be clearly established, not by me, but by many historians and art historians. It has been said that these textiles clearly came from the shores of Gujarat at that time. And Jain manuscript paintings are the living testimony to this particular, trade or commerce that ensued at that time. Next one. Similarly, the tie-dye. This is again a Fustad textile that was exported. And this, of course, I showed you the Ajanta Cave 1 painting of Mahajanak Jatak, where we see the first visual record of a tie-dye and also of the ikat textile. Although in Bana's Harsh Charit also and Kadambari also you find a lot of mention about this particular textile of tie-dye. Next one. Then you have the Lehariya, typically from Gujarat, if you look at the manuscript folio. And these are some of the modern takes by today's designers. Yeah, Bandhes, then Lehariya. Okay. Next one. Chaufulia flower, the very famous Chaufulia flower that we find on the Indus Valley jar or the Sindhu Saraswati storage jar. And the same motif on the textile was exported to Sulawesi. Next one. And you find the same motif on Jain manuscript paintings and the modern take of the same motif on a silk ikat here. Okay, next one. Then we talk about the Gajasingha, the Vyala on the temple walls all across India, in all the temple walls. There you have a Gajasingha on top, on the outer wall of Konark temple. And here on the dhoti of the mother of the Tirthankar, if you carefully see, there's Gajasingha all along, yeah? And this is the revival of the same motif by the designer. Next one. Okay. We are talking about the Hansa motif. I showed you the antiquity of this motif. In fact, it is not, the visual record does not start with Ajanta painting. We have this Hansa or geese patterns on Sindhu Saraswati storage jars also. Then we have lot of Mauryan pillars on which these geese patterns are there. And here we have the Mahajanak Jataka, where he's been shown wearing a Hans Dukula, the silk fabric that is wrapped around him in the form of a shawl, which is imprinted with swan motif. And here you have a Jain, beautiful Jain painting. Look at the dhoti of Siddharth, the father of Mahavir, wearing the Hans dhoti here. So Hans is so deeply rooted in Indian consciousness because of the purity, the sacredness that we attach to it. In fact, in Buddhist parlance, we say that, it would spread Buddha's message, to higher realms. And also, we all know about the Nir Kshir Vivek. This is one bird that can differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. So this is a very, very popular motif. Next one. Now this is very interesting. The same motif, the geese motif and the lotus again is, we attach a lot of importance to lotus motif. So here we have geese panels, they are holding, there are, lotus roundels in between. And interestingly, exactly the same fabric remnants have been found from two different corners of the world. This side from Egypt, Fustat, and this side from Indonesia, Sulawesi. So Gujarat was the common denominator from which these textiles were being exported. And this is, of course, a revival geese shawl by Sufyan Khatri, the master craftsman, whom we will have the we are fortunate to listen to him in the second half. Yeah. Next one. Ajrak, that's what Sufyan Khatri practices, and these are some of the Ajrak panels which have been recovered from Fustat, and exactly the same pattern you will find in Jain paintings. Then this is another textile that was exported to Sulawesi, Indonesia. And these these trees, in fact, exact depiction you will find in Jain paintings. And this is again a modern Ajrak revived by Sufyan Khatri. Next one. Here you see the cloth Saraswati part, and you can see the dhoti of Saraswati in Patola. And this is, of course, the modern take of Patola, by Bird of Paradise by none other than Gaurang Shah. Okay. This is a very famous piece of art that I want you to look at. In fact, what you are looking at the top, this is a palm leaf folio from 13th century, where the famous Jain monk, Acharya, what is his, I'm forgetting his name. However, it will come back to me. So he was composing this Hema Chandracharya. Yes, right. Hema Chandracharya. He is composing his grammar. And in fact, the grammar that he composed was so outstanding and popular that all the grammar books that were written before him almost became redundant. And in fact, this particular cloth panel records this domestic episode where that grammar book was paraded in the city of Patan on an elephant. And this elephant's name was Shrikar, all right. The king's elephant on which the king sat and the grammar sat, and there's a book stand that you see at the back. So it totally burst the myth that all the exported textiles that were sent to various shores were mainly catering to their own tastes or styles. It is not that. In fact, much later that Britishers used to send their own styles, which we today call them as chintz, which is actually a distorted name for cheat. In Rajasthan and Gujarat, we call it cheat, which is known as chintz today. Yeah. So this is the recording. In fact, this banner was made during that time when this parade was happening. And in much later, around 17th, 18th century, this same panel was exported to Sulawesi, Indonesia. Yeah. And now in 2003, by the Salvis in Patan, this has been recreated after almost 150 years. And this piece almost took 3 years to complete. Such is the intricate weaving in this piece. Next one. And interestingly, one more thing I want to tell you. The name of the elephant, the Shrikar, today also this pattern is known by the same name. This is Shrikar Bhat. So it relates to the same domestic episode that happened so many years back. And besides all these textiles, we see lot of fulkaris in Jain paintings. If you look at the Shahi, Taklavat on this side, the blue one, look at the exact copy of what he is wearing here. And also these Shahi kings came from, across the Indus. And fulkari is also prevalent in that area today, Punjab's in the area today. So it, clearly connects the cultural dots through these Jain paintings. Next one. And mushroom I spoke about at length, and you can clearly see some mushroom fabrics, textiles used as the canopies or the upholsteries are here. And this is the revival of Bharashai mushroom silk and cotton in satin weave. So yeah, next I think. And we have, this is a very interesting story I want you all to know. This is an artist, the artist rather, Madan Meena. So we have come a full circle. We were looking at paintings, then we looked at costumes and textiles, and again we are looking at modern paintings. What is the take of today's artist on these textiles that we find, be it ajrak or the block prints or the fadad as we call it, the skirt cloths in Rajasthan, which many communities wear there. So these are some of the paintings which are on display, where the artist has kind of recorded. He has traveled in search of the old artisans who are still practicing this craft, and these paintings actually record his journey, this particular journey. Next one. Yeah. So with this, I'm going to conclude, and I think I've kind of given you an aerial view of what you can expect in the exhibition, and I urge all of you to join me in celebrating the rich heritage of Jain manuscript paintings and the rich heritage of textiles and costumes in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain, for taking us on this colorful journey of motifs and patterns. Gosh, we as designers and artisans, we are spoiled for choice. Thank goodness for these Jain manuscript paintings and other paintings which have documented these beautiful textiles so well. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Vandana Bhandari. a former professor at the National Institute of Fashion Technology, New Delhi. Dr. Bhandari's area of expertise is fashion, dress, craft, and textile. She brings new dimensions to the research of textile traditions and sustainability of crafts in India. She will be discussing about textile patterning techniques in Rajasthan and Gujarat. Please welcome Dr. Vandana Bhandari. Please hold your questions if you have any for Dr. Jain. Together we'll do a Q&A with Dr. Bhandari and Dr. Jain. I would request Dr. Nazia to please felicitate Dr. Bhandari.
Thank you, Gunjan. Thank you, everybody present here, especially to the National Museum for inviting me here. Pawan Jain, such an honor to listen to you, Dr. Goswami, always. And happy to be here today to talk very briefly on the textile techniques and the patterns that were used in Jain paintings, specially produced in Rajasthan and Gujarat. It's strange to be introduced as former professor at NIFT, because that's pretty much what I've done all my life, taught there. And very often when fashion students would ask, where should we go and look for inspiration? And my standard answer was that you are one of the luckiest people in this world, because you live in a country where inspiration abounds everywhere. You just have to open your eyes and look around you, and there will be inspiration, especially if you're working in textiles. So from literary to archaeological evidences which trace the history of Indian textiles to almost 5,000 years, to the Indus Valley civilization, to the living traditions that abound around us. There is so much beauty in patterning, in techniques, in textiles, that one lifetime is not enough to absorb and study all of these. But sufficient to know that even in the Indus Valley, at the time of the Indus Valley civilization, in our country, we knew the art of spinning, the art of weaving, the art of dyeing, and we were almost 2 to 3 millennia ahead of the rest of the world in the production of textiles. The Ajanta paintings, of course, as mentioned, are a rich source of study of the different textile techniques. And Dr. Goswami mentioned that the Jain paintings somehow got left behind and we could not study them. And that was my own experience. I studied the costumes of Rajasthan as my doctoral study. And how many times I went to the Jaisalmer bhandars, and they would just not make them available. You were just not allowed to enter those spaces to study the traditions. So the students who are sitting here today, you're very fortunate, because a lot of that has now been digitized. A lot of libraries have opened, and you can actually just study many of those textiles. Can I have the next slide, please? I just put some images as references. Really, they have nothing to do with my talk or with the textile techniques, but every single image that is there, you will see each of the textiles that we are talking about here. So the first technique that I'll talk about is block printing. And we know that hand-carved wooden blocks have been the main printing tools and one of the earliest types of printing that was done in the country. And of course, these come in all types of different shapes. The three main types of blocks were the Gar, Rek, and Datta, and they were distinctive in their carving, their printing effects, and also in their designs. We also had special blocks which were made for metallic printing, and both for gold leaf printing and for the varak work that continues to be prevalent today. I'm not going to talk about the details of block printing. I know Pawanji had asked me to, but we are in the pre-lunch session. So, and there are beautiful books on the different techniques. So my last book on textiles of Rajasthan at the Jaipur Court does discuss in great detail all the different techniques that were used in Rajasthan. So I'm going to be brief about the techniques and move on. Can I have the next slide, please? So Rajasthan and Gujarat have really an ancient tradition of the textiles that were made. The different types of techniques that I'll talk about today will be block printing briefly, bandhani, lehriya, the gold embroideries that were done among the Jain religion, especially among the covers, and also a little bit about the chain stitch or the mochi bharat that was used. Next slide, please. Something I'd like to mention, we've seen this beautiful piece of textile traded to Indonesia from the mid 15th century, and that is a book cover from Jaisalmer, a wooden book cover printed, and we can see the similarity of motifs that are there in the wooden covers and the textiles that were made. And something important to note here is that after the 15th to 16th century, and we see these in the olden textiles that were traded, especially to Indonesia, and Rosemary Krill in her book, details a lot of the textiles that were traded to Indonesia. We see a lot of animal patterns, and today in block printing, they seem to have disappeared. We only see leaves, we see flowers, we see bales, we see booties, we see buttas, but we do not see that much of animal patterning in our block printed textiles. Yes, sometimes we can see an elephant or a camel, but it's not really part of the mainstream tradition. And before the 15th century, the textiles which were traded, they abound in animal and human figures, and that's quite astounding. So, the swan, the crocodile, the giraffe, as was mentioned earlier, the rhinoceros, the elephant, the tiger, the fish, all kinds of beautiful motifs. And again, I would urge the students who are here to really look at some of the older manuscripts, the older wooden covers, to see the type of the prolific motifs that were present, the patterns which were present, which we don't see anymore. Another great similarity that we see in the Jain paintings and in the block printing tradition is in the use of colors. So the same red of the alizarin, the indigo of the blue, again and again seem to appear, the yellow that is used, and very much similar colors. Later, of course, by the 15th century, gold started to appear in these paintings, and we see the similarity again in our gold leaf and in our tinsel printing that is also done. So a lot of similarities, and obviously it is, that was not an era of, in fact, until 20-30 years back, we were not in the era of the internet, and we did not have television, we did not have films. So people made what they saw, and they made the same patterns that the women were wearing on their ghagras. They painted those on. They painted on the same bandhani patterns, and they painted on the same flowers. They painted on the animals which they saw around them.
or which were described to them sometimes, if they're fortunate enough, by travelers who came from exotic lands. Next, please. So Bandhani, of course, we know is the art of patterning. It's a tie-dyed textiles, very central to a woman's life in Rajasthan and Gujarat, associated with a woman right from the time she's born till the time she dies. The colors, the effects of the dots, the patterns, everything changing along with her marital status, I would say, as she moves on along in life, and also worn a lot by men. And if we look at the next slide, that's a beautiful orna. Can we just go back to that? From the museum, the Jaipur Museum. And here you can see the women dancing around the many petal flower, and completely fine dots, which are, and you can't see the colors, very beautiful, but it's a beautiful red and black orna at the museum. And the word bandhej really means, signifies the technique as well as the final product. And the technique was, the tying of this was always done by women, and the dyeing was done by men. And depending on the number of colors that were there in a bandhani, that many number of ties were done in these. And you just have to go once to see a woman tying these dots to really appreciate the amount of dexterity and the skillful nature of these fingers when they are tying. I mean, they'll be talking and they'll be just tying like this, and the fine dots that appear is quite fascinating. Next, please. And here we can see many of the bandhani patterns in the lower garments of the women, in the ornas. And traditionally, the orna was such an important part of the cultural heritage. Even today, the draped garment being so important, anything that was taken off from the loom and which was uncut was almost had a religious symbolism, and a very, very important part of any social ceremonial functions. So wearing the unstitched was extremely important. Next, please. Coming to the Lehriya, again, the Lehriya technique practiced widely in Rajasthan, more so in Rajasthan than in Gujarat, and Jaipur, Jodhpur, Sikar, and pretty much every village. It was always seen that villages were very self-sufficient, and transport being so expensive, people tried to produce most things locally or within a particular area where there was movement. And that's how marriages happened, that's how trade happened, that's how bartering happened. And in Rajasthan, really every village was doing some form of tie-dyeing, block printing, or creating these amazing lehriyas. But of course, the most beautiful ones came from Jodhpur and from Jaipur. So this is a technique where you have something similar to what I'm wearing, but this is in an ikat. So diagonal patterns on a fabric, and again using the tie-dyed technique. So the fabric was held in a, if you had a square piece of fabric, it would be held like this, and ties would be done on this, and then dipped in a color. And depending on how many colors you wanted, again and again the tying and dyeing would be done. And on opening, the colors and the design would actually be revealed. These are some examples of tie-dyed safas, and men wore this a lot. It was largely done on fine fabric because that's how it was easy to tie-dye. So on voile, mostly voile, I would say, in olden days. Today, of course, georgette, fine silks, etc. are also used for this purpose. And we can see some of the tie-dyed, the Leheria safas, especially in that picture, and in the center over here, where we can see some of the tie-dyed safas. These visuals are from the Jainpedia, which is an excellent resource for visuals, and thank you, Pawanji, for pointing me to it. And you can just see so many amazing ideas for study and for just so many beautiful folios all in one place online. So as I mentioned earlier, by the 15th century, we started to see the use of gold painting in the manuscripts, and the bodies of the gods were painted in gold. And so wherever you see the gold, that was the undressed body in the manuscript. And also here, what we see is the embroidered book covers. And in the top one, we see the 14 dreams of Mahavir's mother, Trishula. And here we can see the elephant, the bull, the lion, goddess Lakshmi, a garland of flowers, the full moon, sun, flag, the urn, lotus, the milky sea, celestial airplane, the smokeless fire, and also the 8 auspicious symbols. And gold, of course, always associated with the most pure form, because gold, as we know, it cannot be corrupted, the pure gold. It was always associated with the gods. And using gold in for embroidery or for painting was elevating the piece on which it was being done to a different level. And here we can see the 14 scenes again in another portfolio in red with the green border. Yeah, I'm almost done. And coming to my last slide. Can we have the next slide, please? And then we have the embroidery which was done using chain stitch, the Mochi Bharat. This is from the Tapi collection, the new book which they have done, the Shoemaker Stitch, an outstanding collection of Mochi Bharat pieces in the collection, and of course from other museums also. And here the embroidery was done using an awl and silk on silk, and largely mushroom was used as the base of the embroidery. And again we see the 14 dreams of Trishula on top, and the 8 auspicious symbols in the lower panel, in the lower book covers. So these are just, I think this is just a glimpse of the type of techniques that were present in textiles made on Jain themes. There are many more themes, there are many more types of techniques, and I think it will require a much more detailed study of these scriptures, and hopefully the opening of this exhibition will allow young scholars to really look into it in more depth and study it more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhandari, for giving us a glimpse of the techniques from Rajasthan and Gujarat. I would like to open now to the audience for Q&A. So I would like to invite Dr. Bhandari as well as Dr. Jain on the dais, please. Dr. Bhandari, I would like to invite you on the dais. So please raise your hands if any of you have a question. On the left. There's a mic on the table for you.
I actually had a question for Professor Goswami. Would that also be...
Yes, please. Professor Goswami, would you like to join us on the dais?
Not very good.
answering questions and if they are simple questions. It's very
यहीं से आप please.
I mean, whatever is convenient.
So may I get a hand mic, please?
I could reply.
Yes, Professor. So I'm here. I'm so sorry for the problem. So in one of the slides you showed us towards the end of your presentation, you had a frontally depicted figure seated with a painted dhoti, which had several panels on it from what I could gather. And I saw several visual parallels between that and a very famous painted dhoti of Avalokiteshwar at the Sumstek at Alchi in Ladakh. So, if you were aware, could you tell us of the artistic connections between these two? About how Western India artistically is connected to the Himalayas in this case, in the 12th, 13th century?
It's a tough one. I mean, I do not know enough about that area at all. But like Dr. Pawan Jain was pointing out how these patterns, motifs, etc. travel. You know, when you talk about East Indian paint, Eastern tradition, the Western tradition, we somehow dismiss that, right? That there are these, very distinct kind of things. But there's coming together, which happens how, one doesn't know. Traders, people who are carrying things from one area to the other and so on. So it's very difficult to answer that. There's no documentation available. So visually one can see some connection, but how do these connections arise? I mean, caravans of people carrying and sort of things from this place to that and so on. I can only say that much. I'm not an expert in the area, so you'll forgive me for not being evasive. But I just do not know that.
May I add a little bit to this question because of my extensive study on the same subject. So the characteristics of Jain paintings that you see were not restricted only to Jain texts at that time. As Professor Goswami also pointed out, the Hindu text, the Bal Gopal Stuti, also showed the same characteristics, the further eye, the angularity. Then we have the secular texts like the Vasant Vilas, which are not religious at all, but it follows the same pattern. Alchi murals, if you look very, very closely, you will see the further eye in Alchi murals also. Bhutan, some of the wall murals in Bhutan, you will find that further eye. Some of the Ellora paintings, you will find that further eye. So it was not religion specific, nor was it region specific. That was the norm of the time. That's how the paintings were being made at that time. It is only that because Jain paintings were so very strict about the norms that were being followed, that this particular tradition continued for much longer time. And any diversification from the set norms was considered pure sacrilege, or it was believed that the manuscript or the painting will lose its that magico-religious purpose or the auspiciousness that they were initially made to serve the purpose. So this is basically the reason. So of course the other traditions of paintings, be it Ladakh or be it in down Maharashtra or Bhutan, etc., or south, these traditions moved away from these typical characteristics of Jain paintings, whereas Jain painters stuck to it for the longest time, and it was only after the advent of Mughal paintings, when there was a lot of movement between the artists from one atelier to the other, that Jain paintings got influenced by the Mughal paintings, and you see the appearance of the round rotundity, or the further eye is totally eliminated, or the different kinds of costumes, the Mughal costumes that you see in Jain paintings. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, please. In the middle row.
So I'm sorry, I have actually 3 questions. Is that fine?
Let's start with the first.
All right. So my first question is, when we're looking at the progression between the painting styles, although we're looking at painting and illustration and illumination being something that we see in manuscripts, but is it that after the ancient period, throughout the medieval period, painting sort of takes a back seat, or particularly in terms of texts and scriptures? And is there also a conflict that arises with the transition of the styles between the medieval and the early modern periods? Like when we're looking at the Jain style with the extended eye, or other styles that would have existed at that time, and then looking at how the styles that, let's say, the Mughal world brings about, introducing new ideas. Is there a conflict? Is there a friction in style or material as well? Because we also move over from palm leaf to paper at some stage. And why is it that paper doesn't arrive in India for that long? Because generally India and China are regions which share material and cultural ideas considerably, and so. Yes, please.
I don't see any conflict as such here. It is just a very, very slow assimilation of whatever the artist sees around him, be it in terms of painting, or be it in the material that he's using, or the format that he's using, for that matter. So earlier manuscripts, of course, were made on palm leaf. So accordingly, you will get those kinds of those size folios, and then the material changed. And your question as to why we started using paper so late, but I'm sure paper must have been around for from little earlier time. But as far as the manuscripts were concerned, they were made available around the middle of 14th century, or little before that. Yeah.
Okay, and there's no specific reason why it wouldn't have been used earlier for the manuscripts?
No, I think it must have been just the ease of sourcing, I would say that. Yeah.
Okay. And another question I have is, when we're looking at...
Maybe we'll take a question from someone else. If there's no one else, then maybe we'll come back to you. To be fair.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Bhandari and Dr. Jain, for curating this magnificent exhibition and for your deeply erudite lectures. I focus in my work mostly on medieval South India, and I was very struck by the question of what do we know about the material culture of medieval South Indian Jains, because we know that Jains were an active part of the religious milieu, especially in the Tamil country. We know that they were being persecuted, especially by Shaivites. And I was wondering if there's any awareness in 12th, 13th century Jain art from Gujarat of what's happening in the broader Jain world. Are there depictions of South Indians? Are there mentions of South Indians? Is this something that shows up in these manuscripts at all?
So, as I mentioned, there are some manuscripts which are there, of course, from Tamil country, but most of the manuscripts that we find, they belong to Karnataka region, because of course the way the Jain religion was, proliferating in that particular region, and probably also not many manuscripts though, but many Jain icons and the old, cave temples from Tamil Nadu definitely have come down to us with lot of Tamil or Granthi inscriptions, which talk about the heritage of Jain religion or the presence of Jain religion in that area. But I would say not very many manuscripts have been, saved from that particular period. Yeah. And again, as I would say, I would reiterate that it was the presence of those Jain Bhandars, especially in Gujarat and Rajasthan. They were the, storehouses of this, huge knowledge. Because of them, today we have these beautiful collection that can be studied. Yeah.
We'll take one last question before we break for lunch. Okay, the first row.
So now my question is that the Shahnama that we saw in the Jain style, it also had the script section beneath the paintings in Perso-Arabic script. So how is that coming into being if yeah, so if the painting is being done by Jain artists, then how is it that, are they learning the script also, or is it just a copy from somewhere?
So have you visited Qutub Minar?
Yes.
Okay, you've seen calligraphy there.
Yeah.
So do you think they were all Islamic calligraphers? No.
No.
They were not.
Yeah.
So they were local Hindu, calligraphers who were writing those Naskh and other, language scripts.
Yeah.
So that is not something that the artist cannot, learn or modulate his this thing. Yeah. Absolutely. And Qutub Minar is a living example. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to break for lunch, and I'm very sure a lot of us are hungry now. The lunch will be for 30 minutes. It is served in the central open arena on the ground floor. Oh, sorry, outside in the lawn.
The lawns.
Okay, in the lawns. Sorry for that. Outside lawn.